On the bloody offensive in Ukraine, there is a dangerous and growing propaganda battle underway. Russia accused of spreading disinformation that's being echoed here in this country.
There was a network consisting of at least 30 biological laboratories.
I will say this once. Ukraine does not have a biological weapons program.
Self-anointed fact-checkers in the US corporate press have spent 2 weeks mocking as disinformation and a false conspiracy theory the claim that Ukraine has biological weapons labs either alone or with US support. They never presented any evidence for their rulings.
At the UN, Russia's ambassador pushed a conspiracy theory Friday, saying at least 30 research labs in Ukraine are actually US-backed bioweapons facilities, conducting what he calls dangerous experiments.
The neocon official, long in charge of US policy in Ukraine, testified on Monday before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and strongly suggested that such claims are at least in part true.
U.S. officials vehemently deny the accusations.
Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
This influence campaign is completely consistent with long-standing Russian efforts to accuse the United States of sponsoring weapons.
You are fake news. Sir, go ahead.
Being truthful, the United States has always been best in these information wars when we're telling the truth.
Yeah, just watch her face.
While Russia is amplifying this conspiracy theory now, it appears to have begun on far-right social networks in the U.S.
Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities.
Nuland's bizarre admission that Ukraine has biological research facilities that are dangerous enough to warrant concern that they could fall into Russian hands, ironically constituted more decisive evidence of the existence of such programs in Ukraine than what was offered in 2002 and 2003 to corroborate US allegations about Saddam's chemical and biological programs in Iraq.
My colleagues, every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Any attempt to claim that Ukraine's biological facilities are just benign and standard medical labs is negated by Nuland's explicitly grave concern that Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of those facilities.
Which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of.
And that the US government, therefore, is right this minute working with Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces.
So we are working with the Ukrainians.
Pretty sure it's not Ukrainians.
The Ukrainians.
The disinformation war over Ukraine, how Russian propaganda is resonating in some circles here.
On how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces.
With independent and Western journalism shut down in Russia, citizens there are being regularly misinformed.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination.
What is in those Ukrainian biological labs that makes them so worrisome and dangerous? And did the US assistance extend to the construction and development of the biological research facilities themselves?
If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
For all the dismissive language used over the last 2 weeks by self-described fact-checkers, it is confirmed that the US has worked with Ukraine as recently as last year in the development of a biorisk management culture, international research partnerships, and partner capacity for enhanced biosecurity, biosafety, and biosurveillance measures.
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
You are fake news.
But misinformation is finding an audience here in the wide open West as well. Far-right voices online, cable news, and public figures who are rewarded with millions of views.
If these labs are merely designed to find a cure for cancer or create safety measures against pathogens, why, in Nuland's mind, would it have anything to do with a biological and chemical weapons program in Ukraine? The indisputable reality is that despite long-standing international conventions banning development of biological weapons, all large, powerful countries conduct research that at the very least has the capacity to be converted into biological weapons. This lesson about the severe dangers of so-called dual-use research into biological weapons was relearned over the last 2 years as a result of the COVID pandemic. The justification was that doing so is necessary to study how vaccines could be developed, but regardless of intent, cultivating dangerous biological strains has the capacity to kill huge numbers of people. All of this illustrates that research that is classified as defensive can easily be converted, deliberately or otherwise, into extremely destructive biological weapons. At the very least, Nuland's surprising revelations reveal, yet again, just how heavily involved the US government is, and for years has been, in Ukraine, on the part of Russia's border, which US officials and scholars from across the spectrum have spent decades warning is the most sensitive and vulnerable for Moscow. It was Nuland herself, while working for Hillary Clinton and John Kerry's State Department under President Obama, who was heavily involved in what some call the 2014 revolution and others call the coup that resulted in a change of government in Ukraine from a Moscow-friendly regime to one far more favourable to the EU and the West. All of this took place as the Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, paid $50,000 per month not to the son of a Ukrainian official, but to Joe Biden's son, Hunter, a reflection of who wielded real power inside Ukraine. Nuland not only worked for both the Obama and Biden State Departments to run Ukraine policy, and in many ways Ukraine itself, but she also was Vice President Dick Cheney's Deputy National Security Advisor, and then President Bush's ambassador to NATO. She comes from one of America's most prestigious neocon royal families. Her husband Robert Kagan was a co-founder of the notorious neocon warmongering group Project for the New American Century, which advocated regime change in Iraq long before 9/11. It was Kagan, along with liberal icon Bill Kristol, who was most responsible for the lie that Saddam was working hand-in-hand with Al-Qaeda, a lie that played a key role in convincing Americans to believe that Saddam was personally involved in the planning of 9/11. That a neocon like Nuland is admired and empowered regardless of the outcome of elections illustrates how unified and in lockstep the establishment wings of both parties are when it comes to questions of war, militarism and foreign policy. The fact that a member of one of the most powerful neocon families in the US has been running Ukraine policy for the US for years, having gone from Dick Cheney to Hillary Clinton and Obama and now to Biden, underscores how little dissent there is in Washington on such questions. It is Nuland's extensive experience in wielding power in Washington that makes her confession yesterday so startling. It is the sort of thing people like her lie about and conceal, not admit. But now that she did admit it, it is crucial that this revelation not be buried and forgotten. Stay free.
Russia is cracking down on the media there, limiting what reporters can say under threat of imprisonment. The war stirring anger across the globe, even in Russia, where a protester interrupted a live TV newscast displaying an anti-war message behind the anchor.
It's ignorance. Yeah, just watch her face.